Ali Ahmadifar, Abir Boukhari, and Marie-Nour Hechaime. We just present the galleries Yafteh, AllArtNow, starting in Syria and based now in Sweden, Marie-Nour Hechaime from Takeover. In the territory in focus, art and context in the Middle East, I would like to propose two actually multiple questions and open a dialogue among you. I would like to start with that question. As representatives of artistic spaces in regions marked by rich cultural histories and ongoing geopolitical tensions, Syria, Lebanon, and Iran, how do you see the role of contemporary art in navigating and shaping the identities of your communities? That's the first question. We start with strong questions. Yes, if you'd like to start.
Well, I think culture, it's always a way to meet each other. So like when we have this meeting, it's true that our region, it's like, what you say exactly, it's full of tension but sometimes the culture can meet each other and talk to each other and maybe to build, like better relationship with each other. So I always feel that art can be, facilitate this meeting or can create this, a point where you can talk about sensitive issues, where you can talk about, conflict, trauma, war, through art to show also this value of art.
So the space takeover started in Beirut 2 years ago, approximately. It was a project space for artists to come and show work in progress or show work that were maybe not completely ready for big exhibition. And I think this type of experimental space that gives a lot of freedom to artists to not only speak maybe about what's maybe happening in a geopolitical level, but really what they want to speak about. And I think a lot of time it's really important to follow a bit what the artist wants to say and how they have their own take on things. Because yes, it can open conversations, discussion,
I would like to talk about the internal culture that independent galleries in Iran have created. A culture of gallery hopping has evolved in Iran, and it's among independent galleries, and it's a shelter for the people in Iran to get away from the effects of external and internal problems that they face geopolitically. But at the same time, the messages that they receive in the galleries address these problems directly, and it has a sense of calm and community between the people there in Iran.
Thank you so much for that reply. It's only the first question, so let's do it with the second one. In your curatorial practices, how do you balance the preservation of local traditions with the need to engage with global artistic discourses, particularly in a world where cultural homogenization is increasingly prevalent?
So our focus has shifted in the new art that's emerged in Iran to tie back these traditional values, these even religious values, and also old literature that's present in Iran. And we are trying to give a new life to them through contemporary arts. And artists in Iran have shifted to becoming multidisciplinary professionals. So we have many artists that have a deep understanding or academic studies in literature, culture, and they try to create a new form of expression to repeat what was in the literature in the past in Iran, but give it new life for the new audience. This has been very effective in preserving the text and reintroducing cultural concepts to people?
Thank you.
I think, the most important thing is to really follow the artist. Like, what do they want to say? What do they want to express? And Lebanon, for years now, has been quite connected with the global art market and been even shaping some of the global art discourse, I think. So I wouldn't see this as separate. No, I would see this as a practices feeding into each other. And I think contemporary art is the sphere where critical thinking is at the forefront. And yes, I think it's one of the most important things that we can bring to our context as well, and also bring forward.
Thank you for that. Well, I have to mention that, I co-founded the space in 2005 in Damascus. And in that time, the idea was, to be in contact with the world, to have this focus about like the local artists, but also to open the door to international artists. So the idea in the beginning was also to kind of like show your own art, your own culture, your own heritage in a way, in a contemporary art way, but also to be in contact with the world. Also to kind of like open the window for the Syrian artists to know about what's going on in the world. But since the war happened, my space was a kind in the beginning a nomadic space, and then it moved to freedom. So sometimes you feel that you are bringing. Sometimes I say, if people are displaced, I have my space to displace even. And in the same time, you feel that through art, you are kind of like showing your own culture, but also being in contact with the other culture. So I think it's layers. It's not really about, being representing, but it's more about giving this possibility, letting the artist feel free also. It has this relation, of course, with the subject. So as a curator, you are bringing a subject related to your mind, to your thought. But in the same time, I always feel that, it's completely up to the artist what to bring also.
Thank you. Super interesting.
I would also like to tie it to the exhibition in our booth right now. Our exhibition focuses on archiving, and historically, Iranians have had a deep history of archiving because of the thousands years of traditional culture in the Middle East. People instinctively, without knowing what they are doing, became professionals in archiving. And although this art form is finding a new footing, a contemporary footing in the world, we try to give it the group we're presenting is multicultural. There are not only artists from Iran, so it creates an interdisciplinary professional discourse between cultures. So artists from Iran present their work and archives and tie with other professions in the group to create a global message through what they had in the past in their tradition.
Thank you so much for that. I would like to follow another thoughts that we have presenting those questions. Giving the challenges and the context within which Yafteh, AllArtNow, and Takeover operate, how do you perceive the evolving relationship between art and territorial identity in the Middle East? Because actually sometimes we just, in this globalized situation, we don't forget our roots, but we just missed the important thing just to talk with our territory, that it's not only global and it's not only elitist. It's very, actually, we grew up.
I think it's the eternal question, no? That contemporary art is always trying to answer, like, for whom are we making art? Whom are we in dialogue with? Is what we're presenting like obscure or using a language that people cannot understand? And for me personally, I'm not so interested in these questions. I'm interested in a way, for example, to think like he was deciding the type of art we are looking at. This is more legitimate. Who gets to be represented or not? These are interesting questions. What is considered art and what is not considered art? And this is, I think, for me, more like a decolonial, I guess, approach to art on these questions. I think right now in Lebanon, by Syria and other contexts in the Middle East, the situation is extremely complicated. So, for example, art spaces, I don't know in the long term how they're going to operate, but right now a lot of art spaces are being open to being like drop-off stations for people who can like volunteer or donate. So there's sometimes urgency that kind of like impose themselves, and that like kind of blurs this distinction between like art or art for art only and what's really happening on the ground. And I think for me that's much more powerful than art.
Well, sometimes also I feel this is so heavy in the shoulders of, like just to say that, it's the mission of the art. I think this is the mission of everyone, not only the artist or the art. And in the same time, as a curator, sometimes I feel that, it depends what kind of, territorial practices I have. Also the artist, what kind of art they have. If I'm coming from the Middle East, so maybe I don't want, to talk about my own perspective. Also, it's, like, it depends. Do I really want to show, that in my own curatorial practices or not? Of course, like, I'm in my heart, I'm completely with. But at the same time, sometimes I feel it's good. Sometimes I keep saying that it's good if they are Syrian artists, it's good to let them, like as artists, to be free to choose what they want to.
From what I've been seeing from artistic practices, artists have moved past in looking at these territorial identities as the shallow perception we see geopolitically happening. The brutal perception of fighting for land and war is almost moving anti-full with past beyond, and artists are looking for deeper meanings on how they tie to their culture and their land without the borders, focusing on the nature of where they've been born and philosophical questions that scour their minds. And we, in curatorial practices in our gallery, we try to give voices to artists and exactly tackle these types of concepts, and have we don't just look at the shallow and media level of what we are seeing.
Thank you. I've got the last question for you, but thank you so much for replying to me. In what ways do you feel that emerging artistic practices in your regions are influencing broader global perspectives on the Middle Eastern cultural landscape? And how do you create works that challenge or reinforce external narratives of your respective territories or not? As you prefer. If you'd like to start,
Sure.
I would be happy.
So, saying we can start a bit in the past, and we had a time where the publicization of art in Iran was very dependent on a Western view, and it was almost art was conforming to what would be publicized outside the Iranian market. The effects of the new wave of artists emerging from Iran, and also the heavy effects of sanctions, have resulted in artists expressing their identity and their issues more originally, and because of the emerging art enthusiast public that's been happening in Iran in the last few years, the acceptance of art is conforming to what's accepted in the public by the people in the region. And it's and galleries are taking these artistic practices and publicizing them to the Western world from Iran themselves. It's no more a curation from the outside, but something that's been projected from the inside.
And I think in general, artists are kind of, they look all the time at dominant narratives and they try to kind of question these narratives. They do that with different methods and tools depending, of course, on the period. And so I think this is the case today as well. And it was the case like how the generation after the Civil War, that again is a generation of these kind of artists that really dealt with archive and the storytelling, mixing the fiction and history, for example. And today, like the emerging still, they have their own tools and their own ways of talking about this. Maybe they also have like interests that are globally have to do with the environment, like the global crisis we are all under and then so.
Sorry, do you think there is a thematic that you find out, or maybe?
I mean, I as a curator, I will like go for specific artists if I like their work. So I cannot say that I know the most scene or I know that everyone is working. But yes, I mean, you can always find like methodologies, ways of looking, sometimes themes that are going to be shared, and not just in Lebanon, like that.
Thank you.
Well, I can't consider myself representing the whole, art scene in Syria. But also, like, now I'm asking myself a question. Isn't it up to the artist to use the medium? So if I'm using like video or if I'm using installation, do I consider that this artist is just, like pretending or following kind of, a tendency or something, or this is like how he found himself? It's not about the concept. It's not about what he's bringing, what he's talking about. And at the same time, if I'm speaking about Syria, Syria was always like in this kind of like complicated situation. Before the war, we have a lot of, like we have the sanctions, we were isolated. We always have like this complicated situation when it comes to politics. And then you have the war, where now like the people who live in Syria, they are so isolated, suffering from like 13 years of like being in this conflict, this war. And at the same time, like another Syrian now lives abroad. So if I live now, like I live in Sweden since 9 years. So if I live in Sweden since 9 years, that's normal that I will be affected by another and has this influence with other culture. But sometimes I feel also art can, like be a kind of chain, like between the work. So if like I have, of course, when you look to the artworks and the history, you will see some influence coming like from the Persian, coming from like China. So that's also normal.
I will go a deep dive so much than this, but I just thank you for a reply to me and to stay with us for that section. Thank you so much for that.
Thank
Thank you very much
for the invitation.
Thank you.